fun. Married a film critic. So I married a film critic.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic, a discussion between a professional film critic and lecturer and me, his wife of 20 years, who just likes to watch movies for fun. I'm your co-host, Julia.
Hey, and this is Barrett the Film Critic. Hello, everyone. This is a viewer request. This was requested that we cover quite some time ago. Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. I don't remember exactly who it was who requested it, but I can tell you, he is with us right now. In fact, Julia, he's sitting right next to you.
Oh, no.
He says he really likes your sweater.
Well, that's creepy. Just like this movie.
Is it, though?
No.
No.
You know what? Okay.
Not at all.
I will say, I never wanted to watch this movie because of the creepy poster. But then when you said, oh, you know, we could watch this, it was a request and it's with Michael J. Fox. And then I saw the actual DVD cover with Michael J. Fox on it, with like the funny ghost next to him. I was like, oh yeah, I'll watch that. But I wasn't going to watch the scary movie cover.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because, I mean, you're one of the many people that stayed away from this movie based on that poster. The poster isn't scary as much as it's vague. It's the famous one sheet where it's like a white wall and you see a face pressed up against it. It says, "Dead yet?" The Frighteners, and that's it. I don't even know if Michael J. Fox's name is on the poster. This film, you know, we'll obviously get into it. This movie was supposed to come out October of 1996. And what wound up transpiring was that the studio had a test screening and it went through the roof, and they said, oh man, we got a big hit in our hands. So it became a summer of 96 movie, and they wound up releasing it within a week of Independence Day. And The Rock, the movie, not Dwayne Johnson, and Eraser, and all the Cable Guy, like all these big heavy hitter movies. And this film just didn't have a chance. It really wasn't properly advertised. People didn't really know what it was. And it died a quick death in theaters. And it sucks because I remember that October of 1996. I mean, other than Stephen King's Thinner, there was nothing going on. So like this movie would have been so big had it been released in Halloween like it was supposed to be. But instead, it just was one of those summer movies that quickly became a cult film.
Well, let's get into it because this plot is completely bonkers.
So it was written by Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson. You may have heard of him. Peter Jackson at this point had only been making movies in New Zealand. He had done a couple of, I almost said bad taste horror movies, but really that's one of them is called Bad Taste. He also did one called Meet the Feebles, a perverted puppet film. He was already getting a reputation as kind of as a New Zealand bad boy. And he had found he had a really great breakthrough film, this drama, psychological thriller drama with Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky called Heavenly Creatures. And this was his first big budget studio film. He made it in New Zealand. It's set in America, but yeah, he made it in his homeland. And you can tell if you look at the background. I mean, it's the landscape is lush and beautiful, and the hillside settings are really just it's clearly not a movie that was shot in America, but it doesn't look anything like Canada, which is a nice change of pace because most movies, let's face it, are shot in Canada. But yeah, this was his first big film. This is 1996, and after this, he went and made Lord of the Rings, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, to get into what you're referring to, it's a very complicated screenplay. It was originally intended as an episode of Tales from the Crypt. And apparently the powers that be, including Robert Zemeckis, got a hold of the screenplay and said, oh yeah, this is a movie. This isn't just an episode of Tales from the Crypt. You should extend this into a movie. So he got $30 million, which is, not a huge budget, but a generous budget for 1996. And he got to make one of the craziest studio films that came out that year.
Yeah, it was totally crazy. I did find myself laughing out loud a lot and also being like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a tonally wild film. It begins in this Victorian mansion, like a lot of horror films do, and you have a woman played by a long-haired Dee Wallace Stone running down hallways, screaming her head off, while this apparition is in the walls, it's in the rugs, it's everywhere. It's this ghostly specter that is terrorizing her, chasing her relentlessly. And there's an old woman who also lives in the house with Dee Wallace Stone's character, who ultimately takes out a shotgun and scares the ghost away.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Dee Wallace Stone plays Patricia, and then her mom, and so then we have her mom. Okay, so now then we kind of go back to like a funeral, and this is where we meet our psychic investigator,
yes,
Frank Bannister.
Frank Bannister, played by the wonderful Michael J. Fox. A lot of critics said, they either really liked him in this movie or like he's miscast. He's wrong for this movie. I love Michael J. Fox in this movie because
I love him
he's
too.
the last person you would ever think to cast him in this role, and that's why he's so good in it. He's funny in it, but it's not really a comedic role. If anything, his sense of being world weary and dealing with the sadness within because of what we ultimately learn about his past. There's a lot of layers to this character, and Fox is just digging into it, and the energy is there. It's a wonder. There's some wonderful physical business that he does, but again, I never would have thought to put him in a movie like this, and I love it that he's here.
There are a few moments where he just is so soulful.
Yeah,
with those like piercing blue eyes. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, because this is a Roger Rabbit kind of performance because his co-stars are not there. He's basically acting with nothing. There's so many special effects in this movie, and he's because thankfully working with Zemeckis has prepared him for that. He's able to, in some cases, to act against nothing and give a lot. At this point, this is 1996. This is some 11 years after Back to the Future, and he's had a lot of, both dramatic and comedic roles subsequently. And yeah, he's 100% in it. I love it. This is a very underrated performance that he gives.
Okay, so he basically goes to funerals and he advertises his like services to help people like rid their homes of spirits.
He's like a one-man Ghostbusters.
Yeah. And he drives around this like dirty yellow Volkswagen, and his reckless driving causes him to swerve and run into somebody's like white picket fence and crush
their gnome collection,
their garden gnomes. Yeah. And so this is where we meet the Linskys. So we have Ray and Lucy Linsky, and Ray is just infuriated that
someone would drive over his garden gnome like that.
Yeah, and he's just like, you're gonna pay for this,
And this is, by the way, I gotta throw this out while we're talking about Ray Linsky is played by Peter Dobson. Wonderful comedic performance, but weird connection. This movie was produced by Robert Zemeckis, very big heavy header. Zemeckis, of course, 2 years earlier had directed Forrest Gump. There's a scene in Forrest Gump where Forrest learns how to dance from the real Elvis Presley. Though the voice of Presley was Kurt Russell, Presley in that film was played by this actor, Peter Dobson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he was doing the moves, though it was Kurt Russell's voice.
Okay. Well, so Frank leaves his business card with Ray, and Ray just like rips it up like, you're going to pay for this.
Yeah.
So... Now we see on the other side of town, his wife, Dr. Linsky, is visiting Patricia at the haunted house.
And Dr. Linsky is played by Trini Alvarado. Remember her?
I mean, where have I seen her? Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's Little Women. Yeah, she's done very good character actress. I like her.
Yes, I do like her.
Yeah.
I was wondering where I'd seen her before. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she's like treating Patricia, and the mom is kind of like, where's our regular doctor? And she's like, well, he's busy, so I'm making this house call. And she's kind of like, something is not right in this house, obviously. Patricia has like bruises, and the mom is super creepy. So she just it's like she wants to help but doesn't really know how. And Patricia's mother just like rushes Dr. Linsky out of the house and tells her that her daughter is not to be trusted, that she was involved in cold-blooded murder.
Yes.
So Dr. Linsky goes home, and of course she has to hear about what happened with Ray's garden gnomes.
Yes.
But she's so intrigued that she watches like a documentary that has Patricia's history in it, and it's about this serial killer named Johnny Bartlett. And so the story goes that Johnny Bartlett was an orderly at this hospital, and he basically killed
Johnny Bartlett
all
is
these
played in the
people.
film by a wonderfully unhinged Jake Busey. And one of the things I love serial killer characters who make it a point to compare themselves to other serial killer characters. At one point, Bartlett's like, "We beat Starkweather's record!"
Yeah. He keeps like...
Keeps a tab.
Yeah, he keeps a tag of how
Running
many
tab.
people
How many
he's
kills.
killed. Yeah, and if he's beating like other serial killers, it's really terrible.
Oh, yeah.
He's unhinged.
Yeah. I mean, Busey, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say it's a comedic performance, but he's performing at a level that there's a lot of dark humor here, and I think he nails it.
Okay, so he goes on a rampage. This Johnny Bartlett character, back in the day, kills 12 innocent people, and
It's in this hospital. It's a
sanitarium.
Yeah, sanitarium. Excuse me. It's alluded to. We eventually see the thing happen, but at this point, it's alluded to that he went on a shooting spree in a hospital, sanitarium.
Yeah. Okay, so Patricia at the time was 15 years old, and she was also implicated in the killings. And it's like nobody really knew if she was guilty or not. Mm-hmm. So it's like they just kind of put her on house arrest.
And this is, Starkweather is interesting because, of course, the story of Starkweather eventually became the movie Badlands. So if you've seen that film and you understand the relationship between the Martin Sheen character and the Sissy Spacek character, the idea of was she a participant in the killings or was she, an innocent bystander, so to speak?
Oh, wait, is this based on a true story?
No, but the killer, the relationship between the two of them is similar to the actual Starkweather. Starkweather was the guy that Badlands is based on.
Oh, okay.
And to a degree,
You took a
Natural Born
rabbit
Killers.
trail, and I did not follow you.
Sorry, but you know what? This movie takes rabbit trails, so I'm fine with that. I mean, look, can we keep? I mean, let's count them up, shall we? So, it's the Frank Bannister Ghostbusters plot, right? Mm-hmm. And then, without jumping too far ahead, it becomes we learn that it's a con.
Yeah.
So that's plot B because it's about him and the three ghosts. And then we got Patricia in the house. We got the backstory crime thing going on. We got remember the reporter at the funeral.
The reporter. We have the cops.
We got the cops. We got Trini Alvarado. And we haven't even gotten to Dammers yet. I mean, there's when you're writing a screenplay, or at least in the screenplay classes I've taken, it's like, okay, A plot, B plot. This thing has like A through Q plot. There's so many subplots going on here.
And it's a lot of characters and they keep kind of like jumping around.
Thankfully, most of them are connected in some way. That's the nice thing. It all does kind of circle together. And it is obviously around Michael J. Fox's character. But man, there's a lot going on in this one.
Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Linsky finishes this documentary and Ray is just like sick of it, and so he's like trying to like have some romantic time, and he finds Frank's card on the bed and he's like, I thought I ripped this up. And then that's when their bed like basically levitates and like crazy stuff starts happening.
One of my favorite shots. It's a great special effects shot because the effects in this thing are really on and off. We'll talk about that. But there's a shot where he's in the kitchen and the plate. It's a shot right out of Poltergeist. The plates are flying around him in a circle, and he's like he's basically just saying like what? It's no big deal. There's nothing weird about this. Like he's doing everything he can to deny it, and obviously,
because she's like, you call Frank and you like take care of this.
Right.
Obviously, we have a problem here.
Yeah.
All right, so actually, like Lucy calls Frank, and he arrives to get rid of the supernatural elements in the house. And he's like, it's going to cost you around like $500. Like, or we could just like call it even. Like, I take care of these ghosts and I don't have to pay for your fence and your garden gnomes.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize like, oh, This was a
It's a
scam.
hustle, yeah.
He's a hustler.
The dining room table spun in a counterclockwise direction.
I don't think that one happened, no.
The toilet seat lid banged up and down.
No.
Did the bed levitate?
Yeah, with me on it.
Spontaneous recurrent psychokinesis. Oh, boy. Oh, this could be the worst case I've ever seen. Oh, yeah, this is bad. Okay, well, folks, I can do a clearance, but it's not going to be cheap. Although I do offer a 6-month guarantee.
How much?
$249.95. There is a 30% surcharge for making a house call after midnight. Then there's vehicle, gas, so I'd say the whole thing's gonna set you back somewhere in the neighborhood of $450. Although we could forget about defense, call the whole thing even.
And the way he does it is so screwy too. It's almost like it's almost like a toaster that he puts in, and the toaster pops up, and it's like ectoplasm, and he just shoves it down the sink, and that's it.
Yeah, he puts it down the garbage disposal.
It's
like,
really not that impressive. Yeah.
like, wait, what? It's like, no, you take that with you. I don't want that back in my house.
Yeah.
But then he sees a glowing number 37 on Ray's forehead.
Yeah.
And so...
And that's not part of the grift at all.
Yeah. So that's when we're like, okay, something is happening. And even Frank doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Frank goes home, and this is where we meet his ghost sidekicks.
Yeah, and we learned that it's a cool gimmick. I like the gimmick, which is that he's a con man, but the con is that he knows the ghosts. He's friends with the ghosts. So the ghosts show up to the house first. They create a disturbance, and then because the house is equipped with the index card, but with his business card, that's when people call him, and he pretends to exercise the ghost.
Like leave the card behind.
Yes. Yeah. So like that's his thing. So like on one hand, it's a cool. I like it because it's like, okay, the ghosts are real and his ability is real. It's just the way he's using this psychic ability, for monetary gain.
Right. And he targets people based on the obituaries.
Right.
Yeah. So if people have lost a loved one, they find it more plausible that loved one is now haunting them.
Yeah, and he's haunting funerals. I mean, he's going to funerals and throwing his index card, like dozens of them into the air like they're confetti. Yeah, it's great.
So Cyrus and Stuart are his ghost pals.
Yeah, so let's see. Cyrus is an African-American, 70s African-American ghost who died in the 70s. So like this is cool. So he's like blaxploitation era, Black Power. But he's got the fro and he's got the bell bottom, so he's a very 70s ghost. And then the other one is Stuart, who's just this nerdy guy.
Yeah. Oh, and then he also has a judge from the 1800s.
The judge, played by John Astin. This is original Gomez Addams from the Addams Family. Yeah, John Astin under tons of makeup. Yeah, he is a horny cowboy judge.
He's a horny cowboy judge?
Definitely.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Did you miss that part of it?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll talk about it. There's a reason this thing's rated R, not PG-13. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I missed the...
You missed the ghost fornication?
Yeah.
Really?
There was fornicating ghosts?
There's a scene in a museum where he's like, oh, she looks good. And it's a sarcophagus. So he goes in there, and that's why you see his backside going up and down.
Oh, okay. I guess I wasn't...
I mean, they didn't have like any mood music or anything, but yeah, that was a ghost sex scene. Yeah.
Okay.
This movie makes time for ghost fornication.
Okay.
That's how much stuff is in this thing.
All right. So we also see like the unfinished house, like Frank's unfinished house.
Yeah, and there's a very sad story behind that. Yeah, he lost his wife in a car accident, blames himself, and it's established that after surviving the accident, that's when he had this psychic ability to see the supernatural.
Yes. So I do think it's hilarious when there's like Cyrus and Stuart arrive at this like rich lady's house, and like they pick up these babies and like float them around the room. Yeah. And the nanny's just like, oh my gosh, and they leave the card. And when Frank shows up, the mom is like, shows a newspaper because there's like this newspaper reporter basically has figured out this con.
Yeah.
and wrote like a front page story about him. And she's like, yeah, nice try.
But at the same, it's like, okay, even if he's the one controlling it, it's like, how?
Right. That's
like,
the thing.
Because these babies are floating, and he's not
asking
there
those
yet.
questions.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like on the one hand, I like that the town is aware that this guy is a repeat serial offender, that he's a con artist. But it's like, how is he getting furniture and babies and pets and silverware to fly around in a circle?
Yeah, exactly. So he, at some point though, Ray has died.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ray Linsky, the one who has the garden gnomes, he's now dead, and he's kind of like hanging out with Frank now.
Yes, he's following Frank around.
He doesn't really know what to do with himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Frank goes to the newspaper and is just like, what are you doing to me? And then this woman hates him. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the newspaper, that's definitely a subplot that
they could have lost that part.
Easy.
Really.
Yeah, I don't think
they don't even need this part. The only reason they have it though is because I think she gets a number on her forehead.
Exactly.
And she becomes a victim.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
I think that's the only reason. Otherwise, who cares?
Exactly. Like there's already enough bad guys in this. There's already enough adversaries. There's enough antagonists. I don't think,
because I thought she was going to be like a main character.
Because she's one of the first characters that's introduced. The whole angle of like, we got to go find this guy, film this guy, report him. Exactly. Yeah. And it
doesn't go anywhere.
No.
And then because when she dies, well, we see when anybody dies, like this bright white like tunnel light comes down and they like go up, but they don't like have to go.
Yeah. It's not like Ghost.
Yeah. It's not like Ghost.
Yeah.
Where they are just taken. I guess they can decide. I don't really know.
Yeah, there's
the
free
rules
will.
The rules are a little sketchy.
Oh, it gets sketchier too. Yeah,
but she's kind of like going up to heaven, which is funny because she's a terrible human. No, they.
She was just doing her job, Jules.
But
paparazzi are people too.
But she's just like yelling at Frank on her way to heaven.
Yeah, which is exactly how you want to go to heaven, by the way. Yelling and
cursing at people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get that last word in.
So Ray and Frank are like hanging out at the cemetery. And this is, we also meet another spirit,
another character.
Drill Sergeant Hiles.
Played by R. Lee Ermey in full Metal Jacket mode. Yeah, this is an actor who, is basically famous for playing variations of this role. Although he did some other character work that was really impressive, Dead Man Walking in particular. But here this is the person. He was the real deal. This actor was a real drill sergeant. And he played a drill sergeant in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. So he had been playing variations of this character on television and in movies for the rest of his life. I don't believe he's with us anymore.
Well, so he is like, it keeps order at the
cemetery. Yeah,
he's like, get back in your graves, and he has like machine guns. It's so off the wall.
And the machine guns come up later. This is a good time for me to ask him. Yeah, by the way, he was a Marine, and we did lose him just a couple years ago. So, obviously, pets die, you get a ghost. Humans die, you get a ghost. What's with the machine guns? These are ghost machine guns.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a Roger Rabbit thing, or even like like the movie Ghost, where you can like move a real penny. These are dead machine guns. These are ghost guns.
Yeah, ghost guns.
How do you explain that? Do they die in action? And so no, I mean, because they're cool, but I don't.
They're guns that were never registered. Literal ghost guns.
Because they're
black market guns.
These are huge, like Rambo machine guns.
Yeah, I know.
And there's an unending amount of ammo in these too.
Yeah, are they the only weapon that are like ghost weapons?
No, we also get a scythe. There's so knives and such. There's a lot of carnage here in the supernatural world, but I mean, I've never seen ghostly machine guns before. I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie.
Yeah, it's unique for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what the rules are in this film. There's so much. Like, there's a whole...
You're looking over your synopsis like, I don't even know where to start with this thing.
I mean, it's just a lot because... We could jump around. Scene at the museum.
Yeah, which is a big museum. Excuse me, a big scene, a great scene where we're starting to see a pattern here where Frank is with someone, anyone, the glowing number appears, and a new glowing number appears on their head, and suddenly this Grim Reaper-like apparition with these wonderful flapping cape flaps around like a bat, takes out a scythe, and removes basically, squeezes their heart, but then removes this, this white orb from within them, which I assume is their soul.
Their life force.
Their life force, yeah. So they die automatically. White tunnel comes and they disappear. And this keeps happening. And the local sheriff is like, what the heck, man? Like, people keep dying in your presence. And
well, the police, they bring in the FBI because they're like, we are having a lot of unexplained deaths in our community.
Yes.
And so they're trying to investigate that. But then at one point they're like, have their eyes on Frank because he seems to be around when it happens, like later on.
Right.
But at the beginning of the film, they're not targeting Frank.
Okay.
They're just confused by these like weird heart attacks.
Yeah, these coincidences that Frank keeps appearing at these crime scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. So after the crazy like museum scene, I think that's when Frank and Dr. Linsky go to dinner.
Yes.
And Ray comes as his ghost self.
Yeah, this is fun because, there's been variations on this scene, since the likes of like Topper and Blythe's spirit. I mean, not just ghosts. I mean, this is an old idea of like, the third date that the couple can't see. But it's funny because, for one thing, Mr. Linsky is a doofus. And, he just doesn't, he's just a foot in the mouth kind of guy. And
yeah, he just wants Frank to like tell her everything he's saying. But Frank and Dr. Linsky like start bonding. And so Ray is like,
he's the third wheel.
He's kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he ends up like pushing Ray's drink onto his lap and realizes, oh, he's like...
He's got ghost powers.
Yeah, he's got ghost powers. Yeah. He's like the subway ghost from Ghost. He didn't even need to be trained.
Exactly.
He just already has that inner rage.
Yeah, a lot of rage.
His gnomes were killed, and he's pissed.
Yeah.
And then, so Frank goes in the bathroom to clean up, and then like another guy comes in who ends up with a number on his forehead.
Yeah.
And Frank sees like the Grim Reaper basically come in and stop his heart. Mm-hmm. So
it's cool. Yeah, and the Reaper like comes out of a mirror. Like there's some cool effects. Although I gotta say, for the most part, most of the effects in this movie are very of their time. Like I think most of the CGI in this film looks really, really dated. It doesn't take. I mean, I think the tone is everything, and I think the performances more than sell it.
I feel like if they remade this movie, it would be so scary. And
I suspect Peter Jackson could really still kill this movie. I really do. I think he would really be able to bring it. But in 1996, the effects in this movie were incredible. I mean, they were really amazing, especially considering how much of them there are. I mean, there's so many effects in this movie. When I saw this thing, I was blown away by the visuals. Now it's like, oh man, these are old computer effects. Yeah, old CGI.
Yeah. So Frank goes on hot pursuit of the Grim Reaper, and he's just like, oh my gosh. So he drives like a maniac every time he gets into his car. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, he really should.
He's a terrible driver.
He should lose his license.
Yeah.
It's really bad. So Dr. Linsky is a witness of this situation. She's taken to the sheriff's office. Frank.
And before we get to another character they introduce, it's worth noting that Linsky is a reference to Melanie Linsky, who is still very popular right now, great actress, so critically acclaimed, still very busy. Melanie Linsky got her start in Jackson's prior film, Heavenly Creatures, so the name is a reference to her. She's in this film. She plays one of the cops in the station. She has no dialogue. But she's in the background of a bunch of scenes in this film. So it's sort of an in-joke, but it's like the actress is right there. She just doesn't have anything to do in this film, but they managed to give her like this teeny tiny role. So anyway.
Okay. So Frank is chasing the Reaper and he tries his best to kill it, but his car just goes straight through it.
Yeah.
And he gets away. All right, so now we meet FBI agent Milton Dammers.
Played by Jeffrey Combs in a
creepiest,
truly bizarre performance. And I really, One thing I remember very well about seeing this movie in the theater, because it played, I saw it opening day and it played really well, but I remember like his scenes were the ones where people were kind of whispering uncomfortably, like, what is this? Combs really monopolizes the movie at this point. His scenes are so strange, and he's playing it at a very different tone and pace than the rest of the actors, which is great because the character is deranged.
I came by train. I was going to take the flight, but I didn't feel good about the plane. At what time, precisely, did Bannister leave for the bathroom? You.
I'm not sure precisely.
Did he use excessive amounts of table salt during his meal?
What?
Answer the question.
For Christ's sakes, it's really late. I can't remember that, okay?
What is this?
Excuse me, Lucy. I'll be right back. Milton.
Sorry, Sheriff. I have a problem with women yelling.
Milton, can I get you anything?
Sheriff Perry, you are violating my territorial bubble.
He's a good agent, but he's as
Is he a good agent?
I think so, to a degree. I mean, he takes his job very seriously.
Yeah, but he's so creepy. And he basically kidnaps Dr. Linsky.
Well, yeah, later on. Yeah, I mean, but when we meet him, like, it's been established that he's been working with cult groups for so long, and that experience has damaged him so severely. I don't know. I like it because the character, I mean, rather than it just being, just another villain or just another foil for Bannister, this character is a threat because he's weird. And Combs is playing him to such a visible degree of derangement that he really does seem like as big a threat or even a bigger threat than the supernatural villain at hand.
Yeah. I mean, at one point I was like, oh my gosh, is he the
serial killer?
Grim
Yeah.
Reaper? Or is he the serial killer?
Yeah.
I had no idea where this film was going, but he believes that Frank is behind all these killings. And he tells the sheriff's office about the incident that happened 5 years earlier when Frank and his wife had the car crash. So Frank and his wife are driving, and then he ends up crashing the car, and they discovered that Deborah's dead body, it's a tongue twister, was found 15 yards from the car with the number 13 carved in her forehead.
Deborah being Frank's late wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Frank was picked up wandering the forest, claiming to have no recollection of the incident.
Yeah.
So now we don't know if Frank did something.
Yeah, because on the one hand, Michael J. Fox is the star of this movie, and the film does have a comedic tone. So you don't think it's going to go in that direction, but there is a darkness to the film, and there's a darkness to Fox's performance where you kind of wonder, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I got things a little mixed up because...
That's okay. There's a lot going on here.
Now Frank ends up at the museum. This is where he kidnaps the newspaper editor.
Right.
Because he sees she has a number on her forehead.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want the Grim Reaper to get her.
Yeah.
So he's driving like a maniac, and he's having these flashbacks of his drive with his wife.
Yeah.
And so I guess the gal's name is Magda. He crashes with her. Mm-hmm. And then she ends up dying by the Reaper.
Yes.
And that's when she gets... the gateway to heaven opens up, and Magda's spirit jumps from her body and accuses Frank of being a sick murderer who is responsible.
As she goes up into eternity.
She's like, you're a murderer! She's going up to heaven. It's a beautiful moment.
And by the way, this is Peter Jackson a decade and change before he directed The Lovely Bones, another film about the afterlife, and not a good film, by the way. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I did. It was real creepy.
Yeah, it's not a good one. That movie is also wrestling with tones, but man, I don't think it wins that battle. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess Stanley Tucci, that's the one movie he kind of regrets.
And you know what? Good for him for saying that, because his performance. I mean, he got an Academy Award nomination for it, and he deserved it. That's a dedicated and he's so good in that movie. But the film just does not work, and it's not his fault.
Yeah. All right, so Frank goes to the sheriff's office to tell them what happened, and they ask him if he had anything to do with Magda's death, and they put him in an interrogation room with this creepy Dammers guy.
And this is one of the things I love about the character, because, again, like, I don't know how much was in the script or how much it was just Jeffrey Combs coming up with stuff, and maybe a little of both, but Dammers reveals the reason why he thinks that Bannister did it is because he used to work in the psychic sector of his undercover work, and he said he was familiar with a former there's this lady who was arrested because she had the ability to basically stop people's hearts.
Oh yeah, so he's kind of
he's like, you have this ability, you're doing this.
Yeah, and he opens up his shirt and he's like, I'm wearing a metal chest plate.
Yeah, so you can't get me.
Yeah, and then he's like, oh my gosh, are you trying to kill me right now? So it's like he's just accusing him, but he's also paranoid at the same time.
He's so unhinged. Yeah, like he can't quite. I don't know. I kind of admire him. Like he's so intense about his job, but he can't quite pull it together to get through even a single interrogation.
Yeah, because Frank does tell him, like, no, there's like a Grim Reaper.
And he explains very clearly. Yeah, he flies around. He pulls out. He grabs onto people's hearts, and
Dammers is like, no, it's you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even though, how would Frank do that?
But I gotta say, Dammers' idea of how and why Frank is doing it, I think is a more plausible explanation than what Frank ultimately tells him.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Lucy, Dr. Linsky, goes to Frank's house to see if she can find any evidence to clear his name. You know, Ray is there too, and she walks outside and sees like a garden in the basketball court that...
Yeah, kind of the tragedy of Frank's life. You can clearly see what used to be there and what is no longer there. The fact that it's this unfinished, this house in kind of tatters. It's like, okay, this is the house basically represents who Frank is now.
Yes.
He's unfinished.
So while she's there, the phone rings, and it's Patricia's mom trying to tell Frank about her fears for her daughter, Patricia.
Yeah.
And Dr. Linsky believes the mother is dangerous and goes back to the house.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Linsky has so much courage. She keeps going to this haunted house.
I thought about that. It's a small town. I bet it's like one of these things where she's, very comfortable with her surroundings, very comfortable. And being a doctor, she's probably seen some weird stuff and weird people.
Well, that's true. But...
And it does look like, it is, I agree with you. It's scary, but it's also a house where, where a poor middle-aged woman is being terrorized by this gray-haired, crazy mom.
Or so we think.
That's certainly what it looks like.
Yeah. So she hides in the bushes, and Ray is with her, and he kind of sees that the house is like moving and stuff. So
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we get ghost vision, and he basically sees like this is the most evil house. There's something so wrong. There's
something happening. Yeah. But she goes and talks to Patricia, and Lucy tells Patricia that she needs to get away and start like a new life for herself. And she sees that there's an urn, and Patricia says, oh, these are my father's ashes. He killed himself after discovering that Patricia had been involved with a serial killer. And so now we're like the lies are starting to stack up, but we're not, because we don't even know like what's true right now.
No, in this case, it's like, no, Patricia is a victim, and she's being held against her will in this house, and her mother is crazy and domineering and wielding a shotgun. And Patricia's still seeing these visions. There's still this thing in the wall that's been following her and stalking her, and in some cases even strangling her.
That's true. And so Lucy hides in a closet in order for like Patricia to distract the mom so that she can get out of the house.
Yeah.
And she finds the knife that was used to carve the number 13 into Frank's wife's forehead.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh my gosh. I think she's thinking like that the mom is the killer.
Yes.
Okay, so Lucy escapes, Dr. Linsky escapes, and the urn starts to glow, and she's oblivious to it, but the figure like slices Ray's head off.
Yeah, so it's like, is Ray dead? Does he become a ghost? Is it a ghost 2 times removed? Is there a purgatory or a heaven for ghosts? Yeah, there's like, there's no sky beam for him. He's just like dies like you would in a slasher movie. So
yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, again,
how does a ghost die?
Yeah,
unless they're like just taken to hell, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a movie where, ghost bullets can stop a ghost.
Well, that's
momentarily, not completely, but momentarily. So I kind of wonder if this was just, a warning to Ray. I mean, presumably he put his head back together and just like went off and haunted some other place.
What, he had like a ghost nurse put him back together?
In a world where there are ghost machine guns, I believe that ghost nurse, I think that checks out. I'll go with that.
Ghost surgeon shows up and like, here, let me help you.
Yeah, he's got ghost medical and goes to the ghost hospital. Sure.
All right, so Lucy goes to see Frank at his cell, and now we're getting even more crazy.
Yeah.
Because then Frank sees a number on her forehead.
Yeah.
And then the Grim Reaper shows up, and we have a whole like action scene in this cell.
Because Frank's other ghost buddies show up and they intervene and they try to protect.
Yeah, the other
protect
ghosts
her.
can't really fight him off.
Yeah, they're trying though. They're trying to hold him down.
they are trying.
Yeah.
Frank says, he's like, okay, I cannot help you unless I'm a ghost.
Yeah.
He's like, I can take out this Grim Reaper, but I basically have to kill myself. And she's like, how about instead of you killing yourself, we just like put you into an extreme state of hypothermia.
It's interesting because for a moment, the movie lets Michael J. Fox put a gun to his head like, oh man, this is taking a dark turn. Plus it's Michael J. Fox, my God. And then she stepped forward like, no, I have other ideas, thankfully. So then it's, this insanity.
But it's kind of like a good plan, I think.
It's a fun idea, yeah.
Because she's going to have him have like a near-death experience.
Yeah.
And put him in a cryogenic chamber that's like super cold.
She's going to flatliners him, because she's going to kill him and then bring him back to life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the plan. So Frank goes into the cryogenic room and kind of waits to die. Lucy gets the equipment prepared to revive him. But Dammers appears in the room armed with an Uzi machine gun, and he thinks Frank just deserves to die. So he kidnaps Dr. Linsky, and she's just like watching the clock, knowing she has to get back to revive him or he'll be dead forever. Mm-hmm. So I don't think Dammers is like a good FBI agent.
Well, he's
not, quote, good at his job if he's like kidnapping people.
He's not a good guy, but I think he's got skills.
What? No, he's so crazy.
Well, what's fun is that every time she screams at him, he like freaks out and he can't be in the same room as her.
Oh yeah, that's great. He has to turn on music or get out of the car, but she just keeps freaking out on him. It is pretty funny. But for someone to like think that, he thinks Frank deserves to die.
Yeah.
For crimes that he hasn't even been tried for.
No. But I mean, he believes that he sees a pattern. And look, this is a guy who has probably been chasing a lot of, for example, cult leaders and psychics, and he's probably been laughed at, mocked. He's probably never made a proper arrest ever before, and suddenly like, okay, this is the guy. I've got a guy, and this is so obvious. He's so clearly the one killing all these people in this town. He probably feels like, look, I don't even need to arrest this guy. Again, making him a great FBI agent.
Oh, sure. Really believes in due process. Okay. Right. Well, so while she's being kidnapped by this guy, Frank comes out of his body. His spirit comes out, and him and the Grim Reaper just start, I don't know. Tussling. Yeah. Because Frank has to get used to his new body.
Right. Yeah. So he's falling through floors and stuff. That's fun. But he's also, but he also takes Arlie Ermey's machine guns, and he's basically getting he's getting the upper hand with the Green Reaper because he's blown him full of bullets.
Right. And they also get like run over by real vehicles,
Right.
which is so silly.
That's odd. Yeah. But again, it's just like, I think they're like, we can do a visual effect where Michael J. Fox's head is flattened for a second. Let's do that.
Well, yeah, let's do that. So Dammers takes Lucy to the graveyard and parks the car up there. And he says he's not going to take her back for several hours.
So in other words, we're going to let Frank die.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so he gets out of the car because she's screaming at him.
Yes. He can't handle that.
And that's when he opens up his shirt and reveals like all the scars on his body. And I was like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
What's happening? Is he a serial killer?
No, he's just been mentally unhinged from all of these awful experiences undercover in the field.
Right.
And so this might be like, this guy has been such a problem. Let's just give him a nice, easy little case. There's this weird little thing going on in this town. Let's this would be like his version of laying low. And instead, because he's, so unhinged, he probably just is freaking out at every opportunity.
Well, this says that the pain that he suffered in the different religious groups, he has its rewards and tries to prove that he has some psychic sensibilities.
All right. He tries to prove it because Frank, at one point, Frank is driving a car.
Yeah.
Ghost driving.
Yeah. So Frank shows up, Ghost drives the car, and then.
And yet Dammers initially thinks it's him. And then he realizes, no, I'm not doing it with my mind. It's something else.
Yeah. Because he's like, my mind is so powerful. And then he's like, oh, it's Ghost Frank.
Yeah.
Which is like, how.
Again, fast and loose with this logic.
Yeah. Okay. So Frank reverses the car. Dammers is chasing it. Sergeant Hiles reaches through the car and tries to throw him to the ground, and basically because he's not in a grave and he's trying to keep order at the cemetery.
Right. And doesn't he get it at this point?
I don't know. But the car crashes into a sarcophagus and coffins fall out. And the Reaper approaches and slices Hiles in half with his his knives.
Yes, so R. Lee Ermey exits the film. Again, whether he's a ghost or whether, ghosts go to a limbo or a hell, if you die as a ghost, the film never makes that clear.
Yes. We just don't know. So Frank rips the Reaper apart with the ghost bullets.
Yes, and this is when we get to the big reveal that gets us into the third act, which is that the Reaper is actually Johnny, the serial killer that we learned about earlier in the film. He has taken on this form of the Reaper when he died. Yes.
He returned from beyond the grave to continue his killing spree.
Right, because he's still, that's what the numbers are about. The numbers they keep stacking up. Yeah.
Yes. So a spirit with the number 1 carved into his head approaches Frank and tells him he was the first, he was the doctor, he was the first victim, and he thanks Frank for what he's done.
Yeah.
But while Frank is distracted, pieces of Johnny's ectoplasm start to drip down into the tomb and gradually morph back together.
Yeah.
So it's he kind of destroyed him, but then he
I think that moment exists because the filmmakers saw Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're going to have this liquid metal just fuse together, then sluice through the little hole because we can do it. We got a computer.
So then Johnny's full human form spirit is revealed, and now he looks like all the other ghosts.
Yeah.
And he doesn't look like the Grim Reaper anymore.
Right. He just looks like a transparent Jake Busey.
Yes. All right. So this is where it gets a little crazy because Frank is about to destroy him. But
this is where it gets a little crazy?
Well, it gets even more crazy.
Yes.
So Frank is about to destroy him, but Lucy revives Frank's body, and so his spirit gets his ghost goes away back into his body.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we get a great bit where Michael J. Fox is covered with frost, and he's doing that high pitched voice thing. It was love it. And then so what happens? So
they have to go to Patricia's house.
Yeah.
And save her from him because somehow they put 2 and 2 together. That.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because he is revived and then she leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she takes off. So she's the first one to go to the house.
Yes.
And that's when we get the plot twist that's very satisfying, because I honestly think the movie does a really good job of it. And every time I've seen this movie a few times, and every time I go back to it, I'm really watching Dee Wallace-Stone's performance, because she really plays it so well. It's a big mystery as to her character. And you know, what we eventually learn is that Patricia it's been an act this whole time. She has been having basically a supernatural love tryst with her former dead serial killer boyfriend.
Yes, which is so insane.
Yeah, and so she's been keeping up this sick relationship with him since her childhood. And the old woman, her mother, has basically just been like trying to keep this kid confined in a house so that she can't go outside and hurt anyone else.
Right.
It's the way Wallace plays. Like again, you know, there's whimsical and comic aspects to this movie, but like this part of the movie is really sick, and the way Wallace Stone, is playing it in this sequence, it's very disturbing. This whole bit that she's like, you know, holding hands with her boyfriend, and that's how Lucy sees it and realizes, oh my gosh, like she still has this supernatural relationship with her former lover, the serial killer.
Right. And she doesn't realize that Patricia is the killer until she goes upstairs and sees that the mom is dead now. Yeah,
in pieces in bed. Yeah, it's grody.
It's super bad.
And then are we at the point now where we learn the connection to Frank?
No, not yet.
That comes later? All right.
Yeah. Okay, so Lucy now has seen the mom. She's dead. And Lucy,
so it's another chase.
Yeah, so there's more like she's trying to get out of the house with Johnny, you know, ghost grabbing her through like.
And meanwhile, Patricia is, you know,
and then Patricia in real life trying to kill her.
Yeah, shotgun blazes. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Dr. Linsky is having to fight off like paranormal ghosts and a psycho person.
Yes, in a haunted house.
House. And then they discover that the urn that Patricia has is really Johnny's ashes, not her dad's. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, we have to get these ashes to the other side. And so they realize that there is a chapel at the hospital where the original killing took place. And that's where they're going to take the ashes.
Yes.
And I'm like, wasn't there just like a regular church down the road they could have taken?
This is more fun. So they're going to do this. This is way more fun. So yeah.
Okay.
So they headed to the haunted hospital, and it's this really cool thing where Frank is via his psychic ability, he's experiencing the hospital the way it was on the day of the shooting, and also what's going on at that moment. So he's encountering Johnny as a spirit, but also encountering Johnny the way he looked on the day of the shooting. And I got to say, this scene is very disturbing. Yeah. I think the details, I mean, not only because we've had so many shootings subsequently, this is 96, but just the tone of it, the pace of it, and the fact that, you know, it's two youngsters on a thrill kill. The way Jake Busey and the young actress, it's not Dee Wallace-Stone in this case. I'll look it up. The young actress who plays young Patricia, they're both very good in this scene.
Yeah, and so because Frank is like seeing what had happened, he also is hearing what these people were saying on that day. So he is like, oh, okay, the chapel's on the 4th floor. You know, he's getting all these clues. So Dammers is now at the hospital, still trying to go after Frank, which is so insane.
He's a man on a mission.
Yeah. So it's really hard to get this urn to the chapel, by the way, because like everybody's trying to like stay away from Patricia and her crazy guns, and then Dammers, and then Frank and Dr. Lindsay get separated. I mean, so it's a lot. And you're also seeing what Frank is seeing, and you realize that Patricia was in on it the whole time.
Right.
And so even though she was 15 or 16 when this happened, she's fully engaged in this shooting spree.
Yes.
And that's, I think, the piece that was very unexpected. Not just the fact that like she's been having this like love affair with her ghost boyfriend who's a serial killer, but that she's also like equally insane.
Yeah, she's a partner in crime. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Frank finally gets to the chapel, and the urn doesn't really.
Well, Dammers, he intercepts the urn and basically just throws it away, just ruins Frank's plan, and Frank calls him an a-hole, which is completely accurate.
So, like, the dust just, like, takes it away, and you're like, oh, no, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
So Frank picks up a metal bar, ready to give Dammers a beating, but Dammers pulls out a machine gun, shoots him in the arm.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how Dammers has like this Uzi in his coat pocket, just ready for use.
Just ready. Yeah. There's kind of a face-off with like Frank, Patricia, and Dammers.
Yeah.
And Frank like falls through the floorboards so that
he falls through the floorboards like what, 5-6 times?
Yeah, like 5 floors, and Patricia like blows Dammers' head off.
Yes.
Which you're kind of like...
Oh, it is great because his ghost head immediately appears.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a good shot.
And you're like, okay, good. So...
we love it that this guy's died.
Okay, so now Frank is like unconscious now, and there's a whole thing with like Dr. Linsky trying to help him, and then the Reaper transforms into Johnny, and he's like... Oh, this is where we see what happened with his late wife.
Okay. Yes. We finally get the reveal that,
Yes.
Johnny murdered his wife.
Yes. So Frank like flashes back to the moment where his wife Deborah died, and the Reaper transforms into Johnny and carves the 13 into her forehead.
Yes.
After he's like already dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like she was, I think, the first person that he killed as a ghost?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, this plot is...
Yeah, they could have lost at least 4 of these subplots, but
yeah,
but this is obviously satisfying because man, this villain, not only has he been around and he's killing people in such an unfair, as the Reaper, he's killing people in such an unfair and such a cold way, but then we learn that he's actually this serial killer who's just been waiting for his moment. And Bannister, even though he's been acting as a charlatan, he's the only person in this town who could actually face this guy.
Yeah. What's crazy is that the Reaper guy, Johnny, he just wants to rack up kills.
Yeah.
Because he just wants to be...
He just hasn't stopped.
Yeah. Which is so, like, how horrible to think that, like, a serial killer gets, like, the death penalty and then they, like, keep killing after that. It's like a nightmare.
There's a few films like that. Wes Craven's Shocker is another one. Yeah, and the Horror Show. There's a few examples of these sorts of characters, and it's fun. The idea of the unkillable serial killer who can, get you through supernatural means.
Okay, so now let's talk about the ending.
Yeah.
Because so
bonkers.
Patricia wants to kill Frank. She's ready to kill him, but she runs out of bullets, and they basically get shot by, like, she gets shot by Lucy. Mm-hmm. And so now we have, and then Frank has like another, Frank dies. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Frank and Johnny and Patricia are all going up
into the tunnel, into the sky beam.
Yeah. And he's going up into heaven, and Patricia and Johnny are like, we're staying, like, we're gonna keep our killing spree going, and they're like cackling and laughing, and then Johnny chases them through the tunnel of light, and then he manages like something it's so weird, like,
well, first of all, Frank goes to heaven and he is visited by his 2 buddies, the 2 ghosts.
Yes.
And they explain that the women in heaven are great. That's an old joke, but I'm always happy to hear it. And so they're kind of looking down at Patricia and Johnny. And Patricia and Johnny, their experience of being kind of in limbo suddenly changes, whereas and Cyrus, the ghost, says, like, you might want to look away. suddenly they're just engulfed by these snakes. There's just snakes going through their face, every orifice you could think of. And suddenly the camera pulls back and we see that they're inside of this beast that's consuming them and then going headfirst into a pit of fire.
Yeah, so they do go burn in the flames of hell.
Yeah. So and then Frank Frank is basically pushed off of his heavenly plane, falls through the air, and his wife appears and says like, it's not your time.
Yeah, you have to go back. Yeah. And she's like, I want you to be happy.
Yeah, be happy. That's the last thing she says to him. Yeah.
So he wakes up in the derelict hospital in Dr. Linsky's arms, and in the end, they end up together, and he demolishes his old house and starts a new life with her.
Yeah.
And then we discover that she can now see the spirits.
She has no psychic abilities, and there's a great reveal because the sheriff comes up to Bannister, kind of checks in with him, and Bannister makes a joke about someone being in his back seat, and turns out it's the ghost of Dammers just hanging around. Yeah.
Yeah, just gonna ride around in the backseat of the sheriff's car.
Yeah.
That's like purgatory for Dammers.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's terrific because he's stripped of his title, he's stripped of his privileges, and now he's basically just going for a ride. Yeah. It's great. It's perfect.
Yeah, and then Dr. Linsky thinks it's hilarious to just like wrap a blanket around herself and act like the Grim Reaper.
Yes.
And she's like cackling. And I'm like, no. I would be...
Yeah, I wouldn't make jokes about that.
No.
What they've been through.
After everything, I'd be like, don't ever do that again, or I'm breaking up with you.
And then we get Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper, which you told me you weren't aware was a real song. You thought it was just a skit on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. I was like, wait, this is an actual song? Yes. I thought they just made it up for that skit.
The More Cowbell song is a real song.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So this movie, I liked it. I thought it was crazy, so surprising. I had a really hard time following all the details. Like the plot was so convoluted. I mean, it all does come together in the end, but it was difficult to follow with all the characters and subplots.
Fair enough. Yeah, this was a major transitional film for Peter Jackson because, it's wall to wall. Like, there's no scene in this movie that doesn't have very elaborate and, at the time, state-of-the-art CGI. As I said, I think a lot of the CGI in this movie is really dated, but I think the storytelling, the momentum of it, the energy of this film, and the commitment of the cast, I think it pulls it over.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the plot is overly complicated to a point where it's like... there's probably like 4 really great movies in here, and we just need one.
Yeah.
But there's just too much going on. But I dig this movie so much. I really do. I love the craziness of it. I love it. It's not predictable. It's so insane. I think the twist with Dee Wallace Stone's character is brilliant, and I think the way she plays it is so scary and so good.
Yeah.
I dig this. I mean, it's not quite, it's not quite Beetlejuice. It's definitely not Ghostbusters. It's kind of a one of a kind. And I like that it gets really grisly and disturbing and scary at times, but for the most part, it's also slapsticky and kind of strange. It doesn't really, people call it a horror comedy. Like, not quite. It's weirder than that definition. So, yeah, I like it. I think 3 stars for me.
Oh, okay. I think 2.5 for me.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, because I was really scared to see it. Like, again, I would see that cover on the streaming. Yeah, on the streaming services and be like, I'm never watching the Frighteners.
Yeah. And turns out it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, it turns out it's not really that scary.
Yeah, which I think is what people said when they walked out of the theater too. Because I thought this movie was very disturbing the first time I saw it, but I definitely oversold it as being really scary to people who would listen. They'd be like, "Oh, that wasn't that scary."
No, it's not really scary, but you can watch it on Stars if you have Stars, or you can rent it on Prime. So
it's out there, and I suspect every October this is one of those that some people will pull in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'll say one thing. I mean, with the popularity of Lord of the Rings, people have gone back to this film. The cult following for this movie really picked up because, Lord of the Rings just kind of took over the world for a while. People are going, what else did he make? And they go backwards and they're like, oh my gosh. Heavenly Creatures is probably one of his most acclaimed films, and maybe his best film.
So he liked the supernatural stuff.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah, and then he went to the epics.
Yeah. King Kong. And then, of course, he went back to The Hobbit, did the Hobbit trilogy. King Kong's got some brilliant stuff in it. I like Jackson a lot. He's his body work is surprising, especially if you see where he started off. A lot of creature features, in some cases, some really gross movies. But he loves the genre. He loves horror and fantasy, and he's very comfortable with it, and he's very good at it. And he's like Guillermo del Toro in that respect. He's like, this is a guy who loves this stuff so much. He's absolutely who you want to make these movies.
Okay, well, would you change the ending of The Frighteners?
No, but I'd like a sequel.
Oh, really? What would the sequel be?
I think Dammers is going to find a way to get revenge. I think he's going to find however he can as a supernatural entity.
He becomes like the Johnny character?
Yeah, but I think he would find something different. I think he would, or maybe when you lash out at a ghost, maybe you appear as a Reaper. Maybe the Reaper is a guise that you take on in this world no matter what. So
maybe he starts a supernatural cult. And
or just like steals Arlie Ermey's ghost army.
Yeah, and Frank has to stop him.
Yeah, I can see that. Because, Dammers is a great villain. And the fact that he's a ghost, I don't know if that really makes him any less dangerous, really. So, yeah.
Not in this world.
Not in this world, exactly. So, yeah, I would like to see a sequel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. But, who would play the Michael J. Fox character? Because
can we do it as an animated film and have Fox still do it?
No.
No?
No. Has to be live action.
It has to be live action.
With the new, CGI effects. Yeah.
I'll have to think about that. I don't know. Because I don't want anybody to replace Michael J. Fox. Every couple of years, it's like, they're going to do Back to the Future 4. They're going to remake Back to the Future. I'm like, no, don't do it, guys.
No,
don't do it.
It's perfect.
Walk away. And Universal is still making so much money off of Back to the Future. It's like, don't touch it. Don't do a sequel. And I hear things like, well, what if, stupid stuff. Like, what if John Hamm plays Doc Brown and Shia LaBeouf plays Marty McFly?
No.
Every couple of years, you hear those names thrown like, well, what if it's Zac Efron? Or what if it's Tom Holland? And like, God, no, walk away. Universal does not need a sequel to Back to the Future. They're making so much money off of that franchise as is. It's beloved. It's become like Star Wars. It has a very strong cult following, but it was also, it's also one of the most successful films ever. And a lot of that credit is due to Fox. He deserves the credit for that film because, Lloyd's great, Thompson's great, and obviously Robert Zemeckis is giving it, but Fox is the pace setter for that film and this film too.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I think one of the best things about The Frighteners is at the center of it is Fox giving a performance that's grounded in reality. It's an insane scenario, but he's playing Frank Bannister as real as he can.
Yeah,
it's a hard-working performance and it's a physical performance, but it's not a stylish performance. He's playing it from a very real internal place, and frankly, he's excellent in this movie. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, maybe I don't want my Frightener sequel because I want Fox.
Well, maybe they'll do a CGI Michael J. Fox.
All right, fine. Maybe Lucy and Frank have a kid, and that kid is born with the ability.
Oh,
all right?
Okay.
So, younger.
Yes.
Okay, so who are you going to cast as the child of Trini Alvarado and Michael J. Fox? Who'd you cast? One of those Stranger Things kids?
No, they're kind of too old now. Well, how old would this person be?
Well, let's just pretend they had a kid in 1996.
Well, what if it's like a girl?
There you go. Great idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Millie Bobby
Brown.
Yeah.
That's kind of like...
Too obvious, too on the nose?
Yeah, too on the nose.
All right.
No, but I think they have a daughter, and whoever is played by her, she has to take care of the Dammers character. Oh, okay.
All right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Frighteners, the next generation.
There you go. All right. Well, I think we did it.
We did it. Yeah, I like this film. I hope people check it out. I think it has a healthy cult following. I suspect if you're listening to this, you've seen the film multiple times, and that's the way to see this movie because there's so much going on. It's easy to miss stuff. There's a lot of things that just fly by, literally in some cases.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I like it. This was one of these movies that I saw in the summer of '96, and it opened up against some really heavy hitters, and the movie really got lost in theaters. And when it came on, I think when it came on basic cable, when I started to see it on TNT, that's when it's like, oh, okay, this thing has an afterlife. So I'm glad. Big fan of this one.
All right. Well, I think that does it for our discussion of The Frighteners.
Good night, everyone.